Ladies and gentlemen, there are people in this world who do not walk away because they stopped caring. There are people who create distance, not because their feelings disappeared, but because those feelings became too deep, too powerful, and too painful for them to handle. Sometimes a person stays away because being close feels like standing in front of something they are terrified of losing. This is one of the most difficult truths about human connection. Sometimes the person who cares about you the most is the same person who keeps the greatest distance from you. At first, this idea feels impossible to understand. When people think about love, they imagine closeness. They imagine two people moving toward each other, speaking honestly, holding on through every challenge, and choosing each other without hesitation. Love is often described as something that brings people together. But human emotions are not always that simple. The heart does not always follow a clear path. Feelings do not always create immediate action. Sometimes love becomes a quiet place filled with unanswered questions, hidden emotions, unfinished conversations, and words that remain trapped inside because they feel too heavy to say. And this is where the confusion begins. When someone you care about creates distance, the person left behind often feels lost. They may feel rejected. They may feel forgotten. They may start blaming themselves and searching for answers that do not seem to come. They wonder why the person changed. They wonder why the connection became silent. They question whether they misunderstood everything. They question whether the feelings were ever real. They ask themselves if they imagined the moments, the kindness, the connection, and the emotions they once felt. But sometimes the truth is much deeper than simple rejection. Sometimes the person who loves you deeply is not walking away from you. They are fighting something within themselves that you cannot see. Sometimes they are carrying old wounds, hidden fears, and painful memories that have nothing to do with your value. Sometimes they are standing far away because being near you awakens emotions they have spent years trying to control. They may fear that they are not worthy of love. They may fear that if you truly see them, you will discover the parts of themselves they are ashamed of. They may fear becoming dependent on someone. They may fear needing another person so deeply that they lose their sense of independence. They may fear loving someone because love gives another person the power to hurt them. And when we look beyond the surface, when we try to understand the silence instead of judging it, we begin to discover something important. Distance does not always mean someone has stopped caring. Silence does not always mean someone has nothing to say. A person stepping back does not always mean the connection is over. Sometimes, distance is simply the way a person protects themselves when their emotions become too overwhelming. The human soul carries many hidden layers. What people show to the world is often only a small part of who they truly are. Behind the smiles, behind the confident behavior, behind the words they choose carefully, there can be a hidden world filled with fear, pain, insecurity, and memories they never talk about. There is a part of every person where they store the things they struggle to face. Their disappointments, their regrets, their fears, their deepest emotional wounds, and the parts of themselves they have not learned how to accept. So when someone loves you deeply but stays away, what you are seeing may not be a lack of love. You may be seeing their inner struggle. You may be seeing the moment where their fear becomes louder than their feelings. You may be witnessing a silent battle between the heart that wants connection and the mind that is trying to prevent pain. This is not always the behavior of someone who does not care. A person who truly feels nothing does not spend hours thinking about someone. A person who is completely detached does not carry memories of another person through ordinary days. A person who has moved on completely does not struggle with the urge to reach out and then stop themselves. They do not write messages and delete them. They do not remember small details. They do not replay conversations in their mind. They do not feel a sudden wave of emotion when a memory appears. A heart that feels nothing does not fight this kind of battle. When someone who loves you deeply stays away, There is usually a story hidden beneath that distance. Maybe they were hurt before. Maybe they once gave everything they had to someone and ended up broken. Maybe they opened their heart completely and were met with disappointment, rejection, or betrayal. Maybe they learned from past experiences that loving deeply comes with a risk they are not sure they can survive again. Because vulnerability can be frightening. When someone allows another person to truly see them, they are giving away the protection they built around themselves. They are allowing someone close to the places where they feel weakest. And for someone who has been hurt before, that can feel dangerous. So they retreat. They create space. They convince themselves that distance is safer than closeness. They tell themselves that they are simply being practical. They tell themselves that staying away is the right decision. But sometimes the truth is that they are not protecting their future. They are protecting an old wound. They may appear calm on the outside, but inside they are struggling. They may say they are fine while carrying emotions they cannot explain. They may act unaffected while your presence continues to awaken something powerful within them. Because sometimes one person can represent more than just attraction. Sometimes one person represents hope. They represent possibility. They represent the chance to experience something real. And that can be terrifying for someone who has spent years protecting their heart. A person who has survived by controlling their emotions may feel overwhelmed when someone makes them feel deeply again. Your presence may remind them of what they want. It may remind them of what they lost. It may remind them of the parts of themselves they have hidden away for a long time. And this is why people often misunderstand distance. They believe distance means someone does not care. They believe silence means someone has forgotten. They believe that if a person does not chase, then the feelings must not exist. But the human heart does not always work in such a simple way. Sometimes the stronger the feeling becomes, the stronger the defense becomes. Sometimes people run from the very thing they desire because it makes them feel vulnerable. Sometimes people stay away because they believe they are not enough for the person they love. They look at someone special and feel afraid that one day they will be completely seen. They fear that their flaws will become visible. They fear that their mistakes will be discovered. They fear that their insecurities, their unfinished healing, and their hidden struggles will become reasons for someone to leave. So instead of waiting for rejection, they create distance first. They leave before they can be left. They protect themselves before they can experience another heartbreak. It is not always because their love is weak. Sometimes it is because their fear is stronger. And that is what makes this situation so painful. Because underneath the fear, the feelings may still exist. A love that remains silent is still a feeling. A love that hides because of fear is still a feeling. A love that struggles to find words is still something real happening inside a person. It may not always be enough to create a healthy relationship. It may not always be enough to build a future, but it can still exist as a powerful emotion inside the human heart. Maybe they are afraid of rejection. Maybe they are afraid of losing control over their emotions. Maybe they are afraid of becoming too dependent on someone else. Maybe they are afraid that if they allow themselves to experience every emotion completely, the strength of those feelings will become too overwhelming to bear. Some people learn to protect themselves by always keeping a little distance between themselves and deep emotional experiences. They struggle to trust complete commitment, because commitment can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff, never knowing if the ground beneath them will stay firm. So they remain close enough to feel the connection, yet far enough away to protect their own heart. From the outside, this behavior may appear cold or distant, but inside, there may be a storm of emotions that nobody else can see. This is where true compassion begins. Not the kind of compassion that ignores your own pain. Not the kind that accepts everything without asking questions. Not the kind that keeps you waiting forever for someone who refuses to meet you halfway. Real compassion means understanding the human story behind someone's actions without making excuses for the hurt they create. It means accepting that someone can truly care about you and still not have the emotional ability to give you the kind of love you deserve. It means recognizing that feelings alone are not enough to build trust, safety, stability, or a future together. This truth can be painful, but it matters because not every powerful emotion becomes a lifelong relationship. Not every meaningful connection grows into a shared future. Not every love story is meant to last forever. Some people enter our lives to teach us important lessons. Some arrive to awaken parts of ourselves that have been asleep for years. Some appear to reveal the wounds we have been carrying deep inside. Some show us what we truly desire, what we secretly fear, and what still needs healing before we are able to fully receive love. Sometimes the person who loves you from a distance becomes the mirror that reveals your own ability to love deeply. They reveal your capacity to care. They reveal your strength to survive pain. They reveal your ability to endure loss while still keeping your heart open. That realization is not always easy to accept. No one wants to feel as though they were only a lesson in another person's journey. No one wants to believe they were only a temporary chapter, a memory, a symbol, or an unfinished story. Yet life rarely asks for our permission before teaching us its greatest lessons. The psychologist Carl Jung believed that the human mind is always moving toward becoming whole. Every experience, even the painful ones, can carry a message that helps us understand ourselves on a much deeper level. Sometimes, another person's distance forces us to look inward. Maybe you are learning patience. Maybe you are discovering your own worth. Maybe you are realizing that love without consistency can never create lasting peace. Maybe you are learning the difference between someone who has strong emotions and someone who is truly ready to build a real relationship. Maybe you are discovering that the heart can love deeply while still searching for safety and stability. These lessons are not always beautiful. They are not always the lessons we wish to receive, but they are honest and they are real. Even with all this understanding, we should never allow pain to turn us into bitter people. We should not decide that everyone who creates distance is dishonest or uncaring. Some people are sincere but frightened. Some people love deeply but are still carrying old emotional wounds. Some people have beautiful feelings but simply do not know how to express them in a healthy and secure way. Some people walk away not because they do not care, but because they have not healed enough to remain. That does not mean everything should be forgiven. It does not mean you should keep waiting forever. It does not mean you should build your entire life around someone else's uncertainty. But it does remind us that human beings are often far more complicated than they appear. A person's heart can be loyal and afraid at the very same time. Imagine someone sitting alone late at night, quietly looking at their phone. Your name enters their thoughts. Their hand slowly moves towards sending a message, but then they stop. They think about reaching out. They wonder what might happen if they do. They question whether the conversation would really change anything. They wonder if they would only make things more uncomfortable. They wonder whether you would even want to hear from them anymore. They wonder what might happen if one simple message reopened emotions they have been trying so hard to control for a very long time. In that silent moment, the feeling does not disappear. Sometimes it becomes even stronger. The only thing that fades is their courage, because courage does not mean living without fear. Courage means choosing to move forward, even while fear is still present. So when someone who loves you deeply stays away, sometimes it is not because the love has disappeared. Sometimes fear has simply become stronger than their ability to take action. But even fear has its own beginning. Fear is often like a guard standing in front of an old emotional wound. It protects something painful from the past. It remembers the moments when trust was broken. It expects loss because loss has happened before. It prepares for heartbreak because heartbreak feels familiar. So when fear keeps someone away from you, it may not be protecting them from you at all. It may be protecting them from pain they experienced long before you ever became part of their life. That pain may have started in childhood. It may come from an old relationship. It may come from betrayal by people they once trusted completely. It may come from disappointment, rejection, or a time when they felt abandoned and alone. Sometimes people do not stay away because of something you did. Sometimes they stay away because of what life did to them long before they ever met you. You may become the person who awakens those hidden fears, but you are not always the reason those fears exist. Understanding this can soften the way we judge other people, but it should also strengthen the way we protect our own hearts. Because understanding someone's pain does not mean sacrificing your own peace. Caring about another person's wounds does not mean allowing their confusion to continue hurting you forever. You can have compassion while still keeping healthy boundaries. You can understand someone and still choose to walk away. You can believe their feelings are genuine and still decide that silence is not enough for the kind of life you want. That is emotional maturity. Perhaps this is the deepest truth hidden inside this entire message. Someone who truly loves you may stay away because their own heart is fighting against itself. But your life cannot remain frozen while they continue fighting that battle. You deserve a love that is present. You deserve a love that is honest. You deserve a love that is brave enough to show up every single day. You deserve more than someone's hidden emotions. You deserve real effort. You deserve real clarity. You deserve real commitment. Still, before we finally reach the point of letting go, we must first recognize the pain that comes from loving someone who continues to remain distant. Because that pain is real. It hurts to care about someone who feels close inside your heart, but remains far away in your everyday life. It hurts because the heart does not work in the same way the mind does. The mind can understand reasons. The mind can accept explanations. The mind can tell itself that someone is simply not ready, that someone is afraid, or that someone is carrying struggles you cannot see. But the heart remembers. The heart remembers every gentle moment. The heart remembers every smile, every conversation, and every connection that felt meaningful. The heart holds on to small details, a glance, a pause, a message, a memory, or a quiet moment that was never fully explained, but still carried deep meaning. The heart can gather these tiny pieces and build an entire world around them. And when that world suddenly becomes silent, the emptiness can feel almost impossible to ignore. You may tell yourself that it is finally time to move forward. But healing does not happen overnight. You may tell yourself to stop thinking about them. But emotions do not simply disappear because we tell them to.